Welcome back to another FPL video, and in today's one I will rate your first drafts. And if you aren't in today's video and want to be in the next one, remember to show me your FPL draft. Follow me on Twitter in the description, and then I will publish when I'm going to be rating new FPL drafts, so just stay alerted. But now let's start off with the first one, which will be from Rumit Gush, and he has a very interesting team. He will go for a 4-4-2 formation, a very strong bench, and a very interesting team. So let's start off with this one. In goal he will have Raya, the Arsenal goalkeeper. Wolves at home, a very good starting fixtures. And I think in general Arsenal will be very solid defensively, so Raya is definitely a good one. He is a little bit on the expensive side. 5.5 million is a little bit expensive for a goalkeeper, but Arsenal were so good defensively, so I could definitely respect that. And in the defense we have Konsa as the first one. I think Konsa had a pretty decent last season, but of course he isn't the Aston Villa player I would have gone for. I much would rather go for Ian Madsen and spend 0.5 million more, although Konsa is a very cheap budget option. And the next one will be Guardiola. Hopefully he can be as offensive as he were at the end of last season, because he had a period where he was just out of this world, and he is now 6.5 million, which I'm not 100% mistaken, or is it 6 million, I'm not 100% sure, but I still think that price tag is reasonable considering what he's capable of doing. And the next one will be Trippier, which I think will have a really good next season, because last year he weren't at his best, but the general Newcastle team wasn't that great either. So I think we can't put all the blame on Trippier's dip in form compared to the season before that again, because then he were amazing. And I think also the price tag he's coming in at is pretty fair for a player with those capabilities. And then the next one will be Ben White, which is 6.5 million. You have a very expensive defense, and I think Ben White is a very good one, to be fair. But I think that price tag is very high, so it will be very interesting to see how good he will be next season. But without a doubt, it's a very interesting purchase by you. And I think that could be a player that I will also be very tempted with, because he have those offensive number potentials, which you just love to see. And in the midfield we have a pretty strong but a little bit weird midfield, because you have Declan Rice and Rodrigo, which is normally defensive midfielders. Although they can get some offensive numbers, I still think those aren't the FPL assets you want in your FPL team. But you never know, they could smash it in some of the occasions, but it's very hard to predict when they will get offensive returns. So therefore I'm not the biggest fan of those two. But in terms of cheap options, you can't go too much wrong with that, I guess. But I would much rather bench one of those and take Esse into this team. Jared Bowen is also another player I really like, because of the appointment of Lopetegui, so I think he also will do very well next season. Phil Foden is another one, taking Manchester City slot. He were amazing last season, and I really like that you have gone for him in this team. The two forwards is also really interesting, but it's also very risky to not go for either Haaland or Salah. But I can really respect the Watkins and Isak choice. But if I were you, I would try my best to get Salah into that midfield. Maybe switch out Declan Rice and try to add some funds, and maybe downgrade the bench a little bit, because you have gone all out in the bench positions by the looks of it. And you never know, you may go for a bench boost in game week 1 or something, but I don't think spending 5 million on defender, I think 7.5 million on Esse and also 5.5 million on the forward position is the right way to go, unless you are using bench boost in game week 1, which I'm not 100% sure that you will do. And yeah, now let's move on to the next one, which will be Ismail Emre. He has gone for a 4-4-2 formation as the last one. That seems to be the meta. And you have some similar players here, but mainly the big difference, or the big similarity, is that you have also had a really good bench in this draft, which is the complete same as the last one. But the difference is that you have gone for some different midfield options. But now let's start in the goal. Verbruggen is a really interesting one. I think he will have a good season, so I will definitely respect you going for him. Although Brighton last year weren't that good defensively. In terms of the defense, I think there is some good picks there. I really like Saliba, Pedro Porro, and also Schär. Although Schär is a little bit expensive for my liking, you could also downgrade him to Dan Burn. In the midfield, Saka, Gordon, Eze and Ødegaard are four really solid picks. But as I said, not having Salah is, in my opinion, a little bit risky, but many predict him not to do that well this season. Although I think this is a really strong midfield, there is some knacks here. You have no Manchester City players overall in this team. And when it comes to Saka, really solid pickup, Gordon really solid, Eze really solid, Ødegaard really solid. So there aren't any real weaknesses in the midfield. The only problem is that you don't have any key players like Foden, like Palmer, those type of guys. And you don't need them necessarily, but when you don't have other players in, for example, the forward positions like Erling Haaland, so you cover up for not owning Foden, and for example having Nicholas Jackson instead of not having Palmer, so you cover up that Chelsea option, although that Chelsea spot isn't that important compared to a Manchester City spot in my opinion. But also when you go to the forward positions, similar to the last draft, you have gone all out for Isak and Watkins. And when we go to the bench, I think it also looks really strong with Areola, Dalot, Gallagher and Darwin Núñez. And I think I've spent a little bit too much on the bench in this one as well. But I guess I could respect it. There is some really good options here. And specifically Dalot could be a really good bench option, but I would personally play him in game week 1. And maybe try to substitute out Pedro Porro, but I also like him. I would personally downgrade the bench also here, and also Darwin Núñez. If you are going to play him, you should definitely play him in game week 1 because he have Ipswich away. But in general, I really like this one. And if we go to the ratings, I think this draft will get 6.5 out of 10. This draft will get a 7 out of 10 in my opinion. Of course, I'm not an FPL expert, but I have been doing pretty well in some of the seasons. My top finish is of course top 2000, which I'm really happy about. But I'm not an expert by any means, so just keep that in mind, but this is just my opinion. And now we'll go to the next one, which is going to be from Bartek Gleba. He will have a really solid team with 3-5-2, and he have also gone without Erling Haaland and also Mohamed Salah. There are so many people going without both of them, which I think is really interesting. And he has also had in this team a really strong bench. But I like this bench because he have a plan behind it from my point of view. And in the goalkeeper position, he have gone for Martinez, which is also a really interesting one. I think it's 5 million, which is pretty cheap for Aston Villa goalkeeper, although they weren't that great when it comes to clean sheet last year. Pedro Porro, I like that. Saliba, I like that. Trippier, really like that. A solid defense. And in the midfield, we have Kevin De Bruyne. I really like that if he stays. And also Gordon, Gibbs White, Saka, Maddison. All of these guys I really like, especially Gibbs White and Maddison, going a little bit differential. Although you haven't Salah or Haaland, you have coverage for the offensive City holders. For example, having De Bruyne, you covers up a little bit for Haaland. Let's say City smashes another team 5-0, you have De Bruyne there that will most likely get some of those points, so it isn't crisis to go without anyone. So I think that is really nice. And one weakness is without going any Liverpool players in my opinion, although it could work out when you also have Isak and Watkins up front, which is similar to the other two drafts, which I think is also really interesting. And one thing I also look at here, which I think is really good, and probably why I will give this a better score than the other drafts, is that you have Guardiola on the bench. Because your plan is to use him, but Chelsea away is a hard fixture when it comes to getting clean sheet points. Your plan is to substitute him in the next game week, so you have 12 good players in your team. And then you can substitute, so the player with the worst fixture can get substituted out for Guardiola, which I think is a plan that I really respect. And yeah, I will give this 8.10. I think it looks really solid. And you have gone without Salah and Haaland, which of course you need to respect. And now we have the last draft, and this draft will be the first one that has Mohamed Salah, which is really surprisingly. No one have gone for Haaland, but I can't blame the people because he's so expensive this season. 15 million is a little bit over the top. And yeah, let's start off with the goalkeeper position. We have Martinez as well, and I think his price, it's pretty fair, and hopefully Aston Villa will be better defensively. He have also gone for a 4-3-3 formation with Dan Burn, Gabriel, Pedro Porro and Romero. You have gone very big in defense when it comes to Tottenham, which I don't think is that bad of an idea. I think Tottenham will have another good season, so I can definitely respect that. Dan Burn also a really good option there. And also when we go further on to the midfield, Ødegaard, Saka, Mohamed Salah, really strong midfield, although you lack some Newcastle assets when it comes to the forward positions. especially when they have Southampton at home. I think you need one of those, but it's not crisis. I think this midfield looks really, really strong. And in the attack, you have Tony, João Pedro, and Watkins, which is a really creative forward trio, and I think those three could do very, very well. One thing to keep in mind is if João Pedro will be that nailed. And also when we talk about different teams, we also talk about the bench. In every single one of these drafts, we have seen very strong benches with Johnson, Kamada, Andersen and Nkunku. You have every single one of these guys may start for their team, and that is just incredible to see. You have such a strong starting 11 and also such a strong bench. So I really, really like this one. If you bench boost first game week, this team makes a lot of sense. But I wouldn't have that good of a bench, because in many of the occasions you will just be in a lot of pain when, for example, Nkunku gets a 12-pointer and Andersen gets a 15-pointer in those game weeks, and you don't have any plans for them besides them just warming the bench. Although you may have them when it's really tough times in FPL with a lot of injuries and etc. But at the start of the season, I don't think you need this good of a bench. Although I really like this one, I will give it an 8.2 out of 10. And yeah, those was all the drafts for today's video. Make sure to leave the comments if you want to see more videos like this, and also comment your FPL draft in one of my newest Twitter posts, because I will publish one really, really soon, because I want to make more videos like this, and especially if you enjoy it. But for now, my name is Salde, and I will catch you next one. Bye bye and take care. Peace.